My name is Daniel Cross. I'm 29 years old. When my brother told me I didn't have a house anymore, I didn't scream. I didn't ask questions. I didn't even argue. I just sat there in my car, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dead air after he hung up. That silence was louder than any insult he could have thrown at me. Across the street, the house looked the same. Same paint peeling at the corners. Same crooked mailbox my father never bothered to straighten. Same porch light glowing yellow like it always had, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. I watched a shadow pass behind the living room window. Someone walking freely inside a space that had known my footsteps for almost 3 decades. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just locked out of a building. I was erased. 3 months earlier, I had left town thinking I was doing the right thing. Dad had just died. The hospital bills were brutal. The house was paid off, but everything else was bleeding us dry. When the out-of-state construction contract came in, I didn't hesitate. Good money. Short term. 3 months. Marcus told me to go. "I'll watch the house," he said. "I'll keep things running." He said it like a favor, like he was helping his little brother. I believed him. The will had been clear, painfully clear. Dad made sure of it because he knew us. The house went to me. Marcus got a payout. Not equal. Fair. Dad said the house needed someone who would protect it, not sell it. Marcus didn't argue back then. He nodded. He hugged me at the funeral. He cried harder than I did. Now I knew why. That first night back, when my key didn't work, I stood there longer than I should have, turning it again and again, like maybe the lock would remember me, like maybe it would recognize the hands that fixed it, cleaned it, protected it. It didn't. When I knocked, a stranger opened the door halfway. Early 30s, boxers, no shirt, comfortable. "Yeah?" he said. "I live here." He smiled, not mean, amused. "No, you don't." The door closed before I could respond. I slept in my car across the street. Not because I had nowhere else to go, but because leaving felt like surrender. I reclined the seat, stared at the ceiling, and listened to memories instead of music. Dad coughing in the hallway, Mom humming while cooking, Marcus and I fighting over the TV remote. By morning, my jaw hurt from clenching my teeth all night. I watched Marcus step outside with a mug in his hand. Dad's mug, the blue one with the crack near the handle. He leaned against the railing like he owned the world. That was the moment something inside me went cold. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. I didn't confront him. I didn't walk up and cause a scene. That's what Marcus expected. That's what he wanted. Instead, I went quiet. I rented a small room on the edge of town. Cash, no paperwork, no trail. I spent the first few days just listening. Small towns leak information like old pipes. The neighbor said Marcus told everyone I left for good. The banker asked if I was back to settle things. The hardware clerk mentioned Marcus was fixing the place to sell. Sell. That word stayed with me. I started pulling records. Slowly, carefully. Copies of the will, property tax filings, utility transfers. And that's when I saw it. My signature. On documents I had never signed. Marcus didn't steal the house in one move. He buried me under paperwork, claimed abandonment, forged consent, filed things while I was hundreds of miles away breaking my back for money he was already spending. And he did it because he was desperate. The debt showed up next. Not on paper. In whispers. In names people avoided saying out loud. Marcus didn't owe banks. He owed men who don't send reminders. That's when I understood something important. Marcus didn't want my house. He needed it. I made my first call that night. Not to Marcus. To someone my father once helped when no one else would. A lawyer with a long memory and a quiet voice. He listened, didn't interrupt. Then he said, "Your brother built this on a lie." I asked him one question. How long before it collapses? He paused. That depends on how patient you are. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Patience was never my problem. I let Marcus get comfortable. I watched him live my life. I drove past the house at different hours, learned his habits, his weak spots. People always expose themselves when they think they're safe. The letter went out 2 weeks later. Not aggressive, not threatening, just official. The kind of paper that makes your stomach drop before you even read it. Marcus called me within the hour. "What the hell is this?" he snapped. I let him talk, let him burn himself out. "You don't have a case," he said. "You left." "I worked," I replied. "There's a difference." "You think you can scare me?" I imagined him pacing my living room, touching my walls. "I think you should read the last page again." He hung up. The pressure started after that. Small things at first. A frozen account. A delayed transaction. Questions from people he didn't want asking them. Marcus showed up at my door one night. No warning. No confidence. His eyes were tired. "You're doing too much," he said. "We're family." I leaned against the frame. Family doesn't erase you while you're gone. He swallowed. "You don't know who you're messing with." I met his eyes. I know exactly who I'm messing with. I grew up with him. He left without another word. That night, I made the call he never thought I would make. The one that turned pressure into collapse. And as I set the phone down, I realized something Marcus hadn't considered. I didn't want the house back yet. I wanted him to feel what it was like to slowly lose control. And this was only the beginning. By the time Marcus realized something was seriously wrong, it was already too late to stop it. The call I made that night wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't involve threats or anger. I simply told the truth to the one person Marcus was terrified of hearing it from. The lender. The man Marcus owed money to wasn't some shadowy myth. He was very real, very organized, and very patient. Marcus had used my house as a silent guarantee, promising future access, future leverage, future value. A house that was never his to offer. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't accuse. I just sent documents, property records, the will, proof of forgery, proof that Marcus had no legal control over the asset he'd been waving around like a shield. When you remove a man's shield, you don't have to strike him. Life does it for you. 3 days passed. Quiet days. Too quiet. No music from the house. No friends coming and going. No laughter on the porch. The lights stayed off longer than usual. On the 4th day, a black sedan parked outside the house for almost an hour. Engine running. No one went in. No one came out. Marcus didn't call me. That's how I knew he was scared. Fear changes people. It makes them reckless or desperate. Marcus chose desperate. He started calling everyone. Old friends, distant relatives, even people he hadn't spoken to in years. Asking for money, asking for favors, asking for time. Time was the one thing he didn't have. I found out later he tried to sell the house fast, way below market value. Cash only, no inspection, no questions. Buyers walked away as soon as lawyers got involved. The paperwork didn't add up. Nothing he touched added up anymore. One evening, I drove past the house and saw him sitting on the front steps, head in his hands. Dad's mug shattered beside him, blue ceramic scattered across the concrete like evidence. I didn't stop. Not yet. The official notice went up 2 days later. Bright paper. Legal language. Public. The kind of notice neighbors pretend not to read but memorize anyway. Marcus called me that night. Not angry. Broken. "You didn't have to do this," he said. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone balanced loosely in my hand. "You did this," I replied. "I was going to fix it." When? Silence. I just needed time. You stole mine, I said. His voice cracked. They're coming after me. I know. Call them. Please. I closed my eyes. I thought about Dad in that hospital bed, his fingers gripping my wrist, his voice barely there. Don't sell the house. I don't have that kind of power, I said. You're lying. No, I replied. You gave it away when you signed my name. He started crying then, not loud, not dramatic, just broken breathing through a phone line. I'm your brother. That word sounded strange coming from him now, like something borrowed, like the house. The call ended without goodbye. The sheriff came 2 days later, paperwork in hand. Marcus stood in the doorway looking smaller than I remembered, like the house had already rejected him. He packed quickly. No furniture, no memories, just clothes and whatever pride he had left. When he walked past me, his eyes didn't meet mine. You happy? He asked quietly. I didn't answer, because happiness wasn't the goal. Control was. The house felt different when I walked back in, emptier, colder, like it had been holding its breath while he was there. I changed the locks myself. That night, I slept on the living room floor. No mattress, no blanket. Just the house and me, reacquainting ourselves. I thought it was over. I was wrong. Because revenge doesn't end when you win something back. It ends when the other person loses everything they built their betrayal on. Marcus disappeared from town, changed numbers, changed places. But consequences don't lose your address just because you move. The charges came next. Fraud, forgery, financial deception, things that stack, things that don't disappear with apologies. I got a call months later from a number I didn't recognize. Daniel, a voice said. Not Marcus, an officer. I listened, quietly. When the call ended, I sat on the porch under the yellow light and let the night settle around me. Marcus had been arrested. Not because of me alone, because of every lie he told after. I didn't visit him. I didn't write. I didn't check in. Some endings don't need witnesses. The house was quiet again, the way it was supposed to be. But something inside me wasn't finished yet. Because Marcus had taken more than a building from me. He had taken trust. And there was still one last thing he hadn't paid for. Thought getting the house back would feel like victory. It didn't. It felt like waking up after a long surgery. Quiet, disoriented. Everything technically in place, but nothing healed yet. I walked through the rooms slowly, touching walls like they might disappear if I didn't remind them I was real. Marcus had lived here long enough to leave traces, not memories, scars. Scratches on the doorframe where he'd slammed it too hard. A stain on the carpet where he'd spilled something and never bothered to clean it. My father's chair pushed into a corner like it didn't matter anymore. That hurt more than the lock change ever did. I started fixing things, not because they were broken, but because I needed to move. New locks, new paint, new light bulbs, physical work to drown out the noise in my head. At night, I slept lightly. Every sound pulled me halfway awake. Trust, once shattered, doesn't come back quietly. The town knew what happened. Small towns always do. People smiled at me differently now. Softer. Some with pity, some with curiosity. No one asked questions directly. They didn't need to. Marcus had become a story, a warning, a mess no one wanted to touch. Then one afternoon I got a letter. Not official. No seal, no letterhead. Handwritten. The handwriting was unmistakable, my brother's. I didn't open it right away. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, turning the envelope over and over in my hands. The paper felt thinner than I remembered, like it had already been worn down. Finally, I sat at the table and opened it. Daniel, I know you don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. I made mistakes. I was desperate. I thought I could fix it before you noticed. I was wrong. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to understand. Please. One visit. There was no signature. I folded the letter slowly, carefully, like it might explode if I rushed. Understanding. That word made my jaw tighten. I didn't respond. Days passed, then weeks. The letter stayed in the same drawer, untouched. Life started to resemble something normal again. Work, evenings on the porch, coffee in Dad's mug, replaced with a similar one because the original was gone. Then the calls started. Unknown numbers, missed calls, voicemails I didn't listen to. Each one chipped away at the quiet I'd rebuilt. One night, I finally answered. "Daniel," Marcus said. His voice sounded older, thinner, like something had been draining him slowly. "What do you want?" I asked. "To talk." "We already did." "No," he said. "We didn't." I almost hung up. Almost. "Where are you?" I asked. There was a pause. "County facility," he said. I closed my eyes. "I don't owe you anything," I said. "I know," he replied. "That's why I'm asking." I didn't answer right away. Silence has weight when you let it sit. "I'll think about it," I said finally. The visit wasn't planned. It happened on a gray morning when the house felt too quiet and my thoughts too loud. I drove without music, no distractions. Marcus looked different behind the glass. Thinner, hollowed out. The confidence that used to live in his posture was gone. He smiled when he saw me. It didn't reach his eyes. "Thanks for coming," he said. "I didn't come for you," I replied. "I came for myself." He nodded like he understood. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said. I let out a slow breath. "You forged my name." I panicked. "You buried me." I was drowning. I leaned closer to the glass. "And you thought standing on my head would save you?" His eyes dropped. "I lost everything," he whispered. I watched him carefully. Not with anger, with clarity. "No," I said. "You gave it away." He flinched. "They're offering a deal," he said quickly. "If you help, if you tell them you forgive me." There it was. The last move. I stood up. "I didn't come to save you," I said. "I came to close the door." His face twisted. "You're really going to let me rot?" I looked at him. Really looked. "You didn't think about me rotting when you took my house?" I said quietly. The guard signaled time. Marcus's voice rose. "We're blood." "So was Dad," I replied. "And you sold his promise." I walked out without looking back. That night, I burned the letter in the sink, watched the paper curl and turn to ash. Not out of anger, out of release. I slept better than I had in months. Weeks later, the sentence came down. Not light, not heavy enough to feel like justice, but real, permanent. Marcus would be gone for a while. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Because revenge isn't just about punishment. Sometimes it's about what you choose not to give back. And Marcus still had one thing left he wanted from me. My silence. The request came through a third party. That's how Marcus always did things. Never directly, never cleanly. Always through someone else's mouth so his hands could stay technically empty. My lawyer called me on a quiet afternoon. The kind of quiet that only comes after you think the storm is over. "He's asking for a statement," he said. I already knew what kind. A character statement. Leniency. Mercy. The final thread Marcus hoped I'd throw him so he wouldn't sink all the way down. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the wall where Dad once marked my height with a pencil. The marks were still there. Uneven. Faded. Honest. "What happens if I say nothing?" I asked. The lawyer paused. Then the court hears the truth without interference. After the call ended, I sat alone in the house and let the weight of that choice settle. Not anger, not satisfaction, responsibility. Marcus had spent his whole life avoiding responsibility, blaming circumstances, blaming people, blaming me. This time, there was no one left to blame. The hearing came and went. I didn't attend. I didn't send a letter. I didn't soften anything. The truth stood on its own, and it was heavy. When the sentence became final, the calls stopped. No more unknown numbers. No more messages through relatives. No more whispered requests. Silence, at last. Months passed, then a year. The house changed again, slowly. Not through force, but through care. New paint, fixed floors, open windows. Laughter returned, not loud, not forced, but real. Friends, dinners, life moving forward instead of circling old wounds. Sometimes I still thought about Marcus. Not with rage, not even with sadness, with distance. I heard things through the grapevine. Prison has a way of stripping people down to whatever they really are. Some learn, some don't. Marcus was surviving. That was all anyone could say. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the porch light flickered on, I sat on the steps with a cup of coffee and finally allowed myself to breathe fully. The house felt like mine again. Not because I took it back, because I protected it. I understood something then that took me years to learn. Revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about refusing to destroy yourself for them. Marcus thought power was taking. He was wrong. Power is knowing when to stop giving. I didn't celebrate his fall. I didn't brag about my win. I didn't even talk about it much. I just lived. And that was the one thing Marcus could never take from me again. The moral is simple, even if the pain wasn't. When someone betrays you, you don't owe them forgiveness to prove your strength. You don't owe them silence to protect their comfort. And you don't owe them pieces of your future just because they share your past. Sometimes the strongest revenge is standing still, telling the truth, and letting consequences do what they're meant to do. Because houses can be stolen, money can be taken, but integrity, once you choose it, belongs only to you.